Good afternoon, everyone. You can hear me?
Yes, good afternoon, Sister Lisa.
Fantastic. Good afternoon. Greetings of peace and Om Shanti, the enduring greeting that the Brahma Kumaris always share. And welcome to this afternoon's insightful dialogue series. um, Throughout this dialogue that we're having. One request is if you can all remember to keep your mic muted, and if you have any questions, you can write it in chat, and or later on, if it's there's the question answer session, you can express your questions. But throughout the conversation, if any burning question comes to mind, write it down so you won't forget it. So, building emotional capacity is what we will be aiming to accomplish today. And the special guest addressing this topic this afternoon is Sona Bahri, who is going to be speaking to us from Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, as her day begins while we are beginning to wrap up our day. you know so Sona has been practicing, and teaching meditation for the past 28 plus years. And she has been teaching in more than 25 countries, all the way from Middle East to Africa to Europe and all the way up to USA. And of course, now traveling for her became instant. She does it all over the world through Zoom. Now, from 2001 to 2006, Sona was the retreat center coordinator of the Center for Spiritual Learning, which is it's a 132 acre property in the Blue Mountains, Sydney, Australia. Quite a large property, where she was responsible for planning and managing, all the weekend retreats that was taking place there for a large range of audience, and participants who come to the retreat, up to 120 guests, which is I believe the maximum capacity, as well as she was managing the entire property, and liaisoning with all the different local communities for, at various levels. And then in 2008, Sona moved to Abu Dhabi and started teaching meditation both in the corporate environment as well as on an individual basis. And soon she became the director of the Inner Space Center in Abu Dhabi, and being responsible for the day-to-day management of all its affairs, of that Inner Space Center. And she has delivered innumerable workshops and seminars on variety of topics such as mindfulness, meditation, stress management, and interpersonal relationships and communications. Now, in the art of communication, and trained for her, for Sister Sona, trained as a professional translator and interpreter. Sister Sona speaks 7 languages. So this is quite an impressive, mini bio of such a great soul. And I had the opportunity to meet her in our headquarters, in Madhuban, in Rajasthan, and work with her on a project. And all I was doing was like at awe at how many things she juggles and she takes care of, and she manages. And at all times, she kept her peace and she kept her poise, and she was always smiling. I never saw her forehead going downwards. It was always straight or up. And she was always being an inspiration for me, you know. So I try to keep that model every time I do interact with others, but do not want to take any more of your time in this precious time that we have her with us. So without further ado, let's begin. Dear Sona, please.
Thank you, Lisa. What a beautiful introduction. Certainly more than I think is necessary. We're all wonderful souls. We're all great souls. And certainly today, good afternoon to everyone who's watching. Good morning from Abu Dhabi, actually. It's 5:15 in the morning here. And what a pleasure to be able to fly to Los Angeles and be with all of you today. So I was wondering if we could just start with a few minutes of reflection, just to bring us all right here, right now, and to be centered. So if I can just invite you to put down your pens, paper. If you're still looking at your phone, then just to put that to bed as well. And just to come to the awareness of the present moment. To feel your body seated on the chair. And just observe the weight of your body. And how heavy the body is. And now just very gently, the mind. Be aware of your mind. How heavy or light is my mind? How much stuff am I carrying in there? From the last day or week, or perhaps the last year. And in this moment, just try to let go. Let go of thinking of anything of the past, anything that's pulling you. And for the next hour or so, let's enjoy some moments of lightness, peace, and joy together. Thank you. So yes, the mind, such an amazing and complex machinery. When we speak about the topic building emotional capacity, it can sound a little bit daunting perhaps. And so I thought, let me just first unpack. Let's just break up what that it means exactly. Emotions. We all know what it feels like to be emotional. But what is an emotion? If I asked you to define emotion, just to yourself, what is it? We all know what it feels like to go on an emotional roller coaster ride. You know those times when You feel like you're out of control and you're sitting in a little carriage, and it could be a carriage of fear or a carriage of anger or a carriage of resentment. And that's taking you on its own up and down ride. And it kind of feels like you are at the mercy of the ride, out of control. And that's exactly what emotions are. Emotions are very strong feelings, often connected with something that has just been triggered in my immediate surroundings, or a person who's just said something to me, invariably something I don't like. And sometimes emotions can even be caused by a memory, something that happened inside, something that stayed, that got stored, and for some reason, a picture out there or a trigger out there, just like an arrow, pierced the emotion and made it volatile again, made it explode again. And unfortunately, our emotions often feel like pressure cookers going off, don't they? You know, you wake up in the morning and everything is fine and everything is smooth, it's all okay. And then it takes so little to just completely burst that peace bubble. And it feels like, you know, this incredible explosion happens inside, just like a pressure cooker going off in the kitchen. So when it comes to emotional capacity, you could call it emotional management, emotional intelligence. That's a very new word that has been bantered around a bit, EI. The other thing people refer to it as emotional quotient. I like to call it emotional wisdom. What is emotional capacity? To me, it's the wisdom, it's the knowledge of knowing how to manage my own inner self. And in doing so, in having that wisdom to know how to reset, reorganize my inner state, I end up actually being able to manage others as well. That doesn't mean that I control them, I tell them what to do. It just means that I'm able to manage situations, manage circumstances, manage teams, or just to manage an individual much, much better. And I always come from a place of wisdom. The wisdom that creates a win-win situation, that creates benefit, that has the forward-thinking attitude to see beyond the immediate result of what's going to happen and look at what is beneficial in the long run. So when I talk about building emotional capacity, I guess it's so important to know, well, what has blocked it? Why don't we just have this inbuilt capacity to manage our emotions better, to be wise, to be sensible? Where is it that we went wrong? And I guess one of the first things I'd like to mention here is what is actually going on in the inner self? Because if I don't understand me, I can't understand anything in life. Isn't that right? You know, he who rules his mind rules the world. You know, he who rules his inner self has the capacity to not just rule the outside world, but to influence it into positive change. So what is going on inside me, and where are all these emotions coming from? Because it's really interesting how sometimes there are situations in our life that bring up certain emotions that firstly we may not know are even there. I never knew I could get so worried. I never knew I could get so anxious. Or we had them and then we thought we were able to erase them. And then a little trigger and it all comes up again and you go, I thought I dealt with that. I thought it was done. And I mean, if you look back even on the last 1 year, 2020, I mean, what a year to remember. I'm sure every single human being on this planet would say that it brought up some emotion or the other, whether we knew about the emotion's existence or not. You know, it feels like it has brought out, brought up to the surface stuff. So obviously that stuff was there inside. It was buried somewhere deep within me. Only if stuff is there can it be brought out. It's a little bit like if you have a bit of dust, a bit of mud at the bottom of a glass, it's settled. And so it looks like the water above it is very clean. But just a little bit of movement, a little bit of stirring. And what happens? That pure, clean water looks so dirty. And then you have to give it time for it to settle again. But does that mean that the dust has gone away? No. You can allow the dust to settle. You can allow the dirt to settle. And you can think, you can pretend, you can hope that it's gone away, but actually it hasn't. It hasn't completely been transformed. So when I want to build my emotional capacity, I really want to build the capacity to do inner cleansing, to be able to clean out all that dirt and dust and residue that's there from my own past. Because that is what is creating the turbulence. That is what is creating the emotional roller coaster, the pressure cooker effect. So I'd like you all now just to imagine in your own mind an iceberg. You all know what an iceberg looks like. So you have, it's like a triangle almost, isn't it? Just has a strange shape, but the tip or the top part, just that little bit at the top of the iceberg, 10% to be exact, is above the water. And then 90%, the bulk of the iceberg, is below the water. And the 10% is a little bit like our conscious mind. It's the current thinking, the current feeling. It's all the stuff that we know that's going on in our mind. We're aware of it. Mostly we know how to deal with it because we know it's there. So you can slow down your mind. You might be able to transform those thoughts. In psychology, often they take you through processes like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to help you to shift the kind of thinking that you're having. And that's a good thing. Of course, it's a good thing. But the tricky part is that there's 90% below the water. And that 90% is the stuff that you don't see. The stuff that's hidden there. And a little bit like a rubbish bin. If you keep stuff in your rubbish bin for long, what happens? Well, it stinks. It starts to attract all sorts of insects and bugs. And if you have rats, then rats, cockroaches, which is why it's so important to check out the rubbish on a regular basis. And so this 90% of the iceberg, it's stored so much stuff for so long. And that 90% is actually what I would call your subconscious mind. It is all the old paraphernalia that I've accumulated. So my memories, my past experiences, my own perceptions of what happened, my points of view. And from all of that has developed my own response system. When things happen in life, we develop a way of counteracting that. We develop a way of being able to respond in a way that I protect myself. Because obviously when things happen on the outside and they're painful, or they create confusion inside, why is the person behaving like this? What am I supposed to say? So are they going to do what they did yesterday? So we create responses that help to protect our little heart that doesn't want to feel any more pain. And in time, those responses are repeated and repeated and repeated, and they start to create an automatic reaction. I don't have to think. It just becomes like a programming inside that's running. Trigger, response, trigger, response. And so my whole 90%, of the subconscious mind is now filled, with all these responses, reactions, behavioral patterns, programming, wiring, whatever you want to call it. And this lies dormant beneath the surface. And sometimes we know that we have certain responses, reactions inside us that are not healthy, that are not appropriate. Many of the time, we don't know what's even there. We only know when it gets triggered. And we go on that emotional roller coaster. Oh, that was an interesting journey. That was an interesting ride. Where did that come from? A wise soul never ignores those rides. A wise person pays a lot of attention to where did that emotional roller coaster ride begin? What was the trigger on the outside? And what did it trigger inside me? Because on the outside, there could be many triggers. On the inside, there's just me. And at the end of the day, we can only control so much of our external world. Unless you want to sort of distance yourself from the entire world and just go and live in a cave somewhere up in the mountains, where you grow your own vegetables and, you have fresh water somehow. Unless you do that, even then, there are triggers like the weather. Your cave might become old and then sort of suddenly cave in. Anything can happen, right? There's the story of this monk. You might have heard this, right? And so the monk used to get very angry. And there were so many triggers on the outside. There were his disciples. There were the cleaners in the monastery. There were his own peers. Everybody would make him angry. And he was a very nice monk, but he hadn't understood his own emotions and what was going on inside. So he decided one day to just leave and to go for a little boat ride. He had his own little canoe. So he took his canoe and went to the middle of this beautiful lake, such a peaceful lake. There was nobody around. And he thought, finally, I found a place where I'm away from all that drama, all those triggers, all that craziness of the monastery. And here, no one can disturb me. And he looked around and the lake was so tranquil and beautiful. And so he said, now I can meditate. Now I can be at peace. So he closed his eyes and he sat there like the perfect monk. And the boat obviously was drifting. It was fine because it was a big lake and there was Didn't seem to be anyone around. And even if there was someone around, obviously they would see, right, that there's a monk meditating and we stay away. And after about 5 or 10 minutes of meditating, his boat suddenly gets hit by something. And the monk opens his eyes and that same anger starts to come up, the same roller coaster ride. And he thought, you know, now whoever's done this, they're really going to have it. He opens his eyes and what does he see? He sees another empty boat that's just come and banged into his boat. The boat was just floating around on the lake and happened to come close to his. And so who's he going to shout at? Who's he going to yell at now? And who's going to listen to him? He's all alone. And so in a sense, this is why I say, you know, you can manage your external life, external situations, but you cannot control them at all. So what you hear in the background, again, I can't manage or control it, is actually the beautiful call to prayer that we have here at this time in the morning. So it's lovely, because if you think of everything as a reminder, whenever the call to prayer goes off in this part of the world, it's another reminder for me to be still and peaceful. And so it will finish in a couple of minutes, but just thought you might be wondering who's yelling in the background. It's beautiful. So back to the story of the monk, you know, we can run away, but you can't hide. You can't hide from yourself, because ultimately that needs to be dealt with. And so this 90% of the inside, the iceberg, it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be cleansed. It needs to be healed before I can create or build capacity. The capacity to behave with wisdom, to react or respond to life in a way that creates benefit, that is a win-win situation for everybody involved, including myself. So how do I do that? Now that I've understood that the external world will always be there, the external world will always create triggers, as long as I have patterns inside me that can be triggered. I'll repeat that. The external world will keep creating triggers as long as I have patterns inside me that can be triggered. It's a bit like, you know, we say, you press my buttons. Well, why do you have buttons inside you? Why do you have patterns, wiring, programming that other people can trigger? And it's not your fault, and it's not anyone else's fault that they're there. They're just a product of life. We've all been on a journey in life. We've all been through various stages in life. And we have all developed layers and layers and layers of patterns of thinking, of feeling, of behaving that have just come up naturally. You know, they were in response to something that occurred on the outside, and then they got filed away, and another file, and another file, and another pattern, and another. And it went on and on and on. And it's not anyone's fault. It just is what it is. But today I can actually deal with it. I can clean it out. I can keep what I need to, and I can throw away what is not serving me, what is not beneficial. And so I think the wisdom to firstly observe the self, the wisdom to know what is going on, would be the first step in building my own capacity. The second step is creating courage, the courage to change, it's not easy to face one's own rubbish. It's not easy to have that feeling of, oh my God, I did it again, same old mistake. And I'm sure we all go through that. I certainly do. And not to be hard on oneself, not to blame the self, not to blame others either, but just to have the courage and the determination that it's up to me to change. It's up to me to take responsibility for my life, the ability to respond in a wise way. The third step would be the inner cleansing, the inner ability to rewire, to reprogram, and in that reprogramming, getting rid of the old, bringing in the new. So let's go step by step. To know, to observe. I think most of the time we are taught in this world, in our cultures, that we need to judge everything that we see. I'm not sure about you, but I grew up with so many adjectives in my life. Excuse me. The minute you see something, the minute you observe something, it's either good or not good, nice or not nice, you know. And then as you grow in life, you just keep adding on more and more and more adjectives to that. Isn't that correct? The one thing that we don't teach our children, perhaps, is how to step back and how to observe from a neutral place. Sorry, just give me a moment to have some water. So yes, to be able to observe, to watch what's going on, but without any bias, without any judgment, and certainly without any criticism. And in spiritual jargon, this is what we call being a detached observer. It's the ability to actually step out or to step back from a situation and to be able to watch it, but without actually giving it an adjective and saying, oh, that was the right thing to do, or that was the wrong thing to do. That was good, that was bad, that was painful, that was not. Just watch. Watch the game. Sometimes I call it the helicopter view. You know, it's the ability to step up onto a helicopter and to see things from a different point of view. Because when you're in a situation, when you're on the ground, and if you're lost in a jungle, is it easy to find your way out? Is it easy to know where danger lies? Is it easy to see the path, especially if it's dark? No. But if you're in a helicopter up there, watching the scene below, it's so much easier to see things, not just in the immediate surroundings, but, you know, to see the broad view, to have a broader view of what's going on. Not only can you see where you are, but you can see where other things are placed in relation to your position. And I think this is what being a detached observer means. Where am I placed? What is my position? And what is the position of all those around me? To be able to see that and to observe it in a very neutral way. And when I say neutral, I don't mean without feelings or just, you know, being a bit distant. No. In a neutral way, I think means in a kind way, in a compassionate way, in a way that cares for all those involved. When you watch in a detached way from the helicopter, then you see everyone as equal. You know, you're able to step into the shoes of each person, to feel what they are feeling, to know what they're going through, and to create a very magical word called understanding. When I understand something, it naturally, automatically, easily gives me wisdom. Understanding something is the key to being able to bring goodness to the table, to bring goodness into a situation. If I haven't understood the situation, the people in the situation, the circumstances, if I haven't understood where they're coming from, if I haven't understood what is the purpose of what they're bringing to the situation, where they want to go to, you know, if I haven't taken into account these two important factors, it's really important. It's really difficult to make sense of what is going on. And it's actually quite difficult to be able to manage my own responses in that situation. So to observe something in a detached way, to step back from a situation, allows me that space to understand better, to see things from a much better perspective. And if I can do that, then automatically I've raised my consciousness. I've completely changed my perspective. It's easy to do that if you practice. Just practice when you're in a situation, stepping back and observe it. Sometimes it's good to even observe the self, to observe what it is that triggers your emotion, then step back and go, what happened there? Why did that get triggered? What was it that the person said? And most importantly, what inside me, what belief, what feeling got suddenly pushed and created an emotional imbalance, which is what we call emotion. Unless I can deeply identify that through my own observation, it's really hard to create change. So I need to kind of understand my own self better and go, hang on, why did you behave the way you behaved? What was it that got triggered? And where did that all begin? So, for example, yesterday someone said something to me, and I could feel inside me this incredible discomfort beginning. It was like, how dare you say that to me? I mean, how could you say that to me after all that I've done? Have you ever had that feeling? And in that moment, the best I could do was just to hold that emotion deep down inside. Just stay with it. Don't react. Don't respond. Don't say anything. Just hold it. And in doing that, I actually started to realize that I had expected the person to not behave in that way, to not speak in that way. And whether it was right or whether it was wrong is immaterial. But my own expectation that they will behave in what I call the nicer way had not taken into account that if they didn't, then there was something in me that was still being triggered. There was, that little bit of ego inside me that said, if I've been good to you, then you should be good to me. It doesn't work that way in life, does it? And so ultimately, what the person said or did is completely out of my head. And all that stays with me was that little roller coaster that happened. It wasn't a big one, but it was a little one. Came from a need to be respected, to be appreciated, and that after all that I've done, again, it's just ego, isn't it? That surely you should acknowledge me and not behave in that way. You know, this is a simple example, but because it's so relevant and it happened yesterday, so it's right there in my mind. So I thought, you know, it's good to share real life experiences. And this is something that was very real yesterday. So observe, don't judge, just watch and go, Sona. So that's still there, that feeling of needing appreciation, acknowledgement, and being treated with respect. That's still there. So after observing something, you know, and trying to be as neutral, unbiased, but also considerate and careful and compassionate with yourself and others, the next step then is, so observe. Ultimately, we do want to clean, we do want to reprogram. But I think somewhere in between, we also need to figure out what it is or where it is that this has come from, where the trigger has been created in our own life. And you know, in spirituality, in Raj Yoga meditation, which is what we practice in the Brahma Kumaris, we understand that the battery of each soul, the battery of each human being, has become a little bit less charged over time, over the journey that we've been on. Maybe not flat, maybe not completely empty, but as the battery of the inner being, the soul, the inner self, went from full and then sort of slowly lost some of its power, it's almost as though I gave that power away, and external situations and external triggers, people have taken that power and they now exert control over me. And so as that process has happened, it has meant that I have become weaker and weaker and weaker. And in that process, you know, in English, a very common phrase that we use is, I've given my power away. So people have taken the remote control of my mind, in a sense, and they are pressing on the channels that they want to actually trigger. They want to watch. Someone says something, remote control, my mind reacts in a particular way. Someone does something, they've got the remote control, my mind reacts. And so when I recognize that, then one very important factor is empowering myself, rebuilding the inner strength, the capacity, the inner capacity, you know, the inner power within the soul. And every time I create an experience that is aligned with my own inner self, the true self, the real me, it's like I give back power to me. What is the real me? Or who is the real me? So back to the iceberg. The bottommost layer of this iceberg is actually the real self. It is the pure self. It is the self that is programmed to peace, to love, to compassion, to mercy, and to joy. Inside out joy, not the happiness that comes from outside, but the happiness that comes from the inside. And so this programming, which is right at the bottom of that iceberg, has been completely covered over with all those layers, so many layers of wrong programming. And I say wrong here because it's not bringing me any joy. There are triggers that are being activated. You know, they are buttons that are being pressed that are taking me on, you know, a roller coaster ride, which is not comfortable. So every time I go back to the experience of these original pure qualities within myself, it's as though I start to reprogram, rewire myself back to something pure, something clean. and the actual feelings that I do want to feel, not the emotions that make me feel out of control. And by doing that again and again and again, I start to give them strength. I start to empower a side of me, a part of me that is valuable, not just to me, but to others. And if I can always come from that space, if my reaction, if my reprogramming is done and takes me back to that kind of program, then can you imagine how we would be? You know, someone says something, someone does something from the outside, and the only thing I can respond with is peace, love, happiness, wisdom, power, you know, all that is good. Not only does that protect me, not only does it make me feel good, but what it's also doing is it's creating a response that will generate goodness on the outside. So when I give myself space, when I learn to meditate and I give myself inner space, the space, the time to rethink the way I want to react, the way I want to respond, I'm actually starting the process of cleansing. I'm actually starting the process of creating choices, of giving myself the opportunity to say, do I want to pick the old reaction, the old way, the old emotion, or do I want to try something new? Reach deep down inside for what is there beneath all of those layers and reactions. And this process of, in a sense, rewiring, or what I like to call healing, cleansing, is what ultimately helps me to build capacity to be emotionally wise, to be able to always come from that place, that inner space that represents who I really am, the real me. So that when the trigger does hit me deep down inside, it's hitting those layers of purity and love and peace, and automatically giving a reaction that is a feeling that is stable, that is clean, that is pure, and that will bring a sensible outcome. And sometimes that might just be being quiet, smiling, being calm, even saying things like, I need time to think about this. I just need time to reassess, you know, how I'm going to respond to what you've just said, or what the situation is asking of me. And giving yourself time and space is one of the greatest gifts that we can do for the inner self. So I can go on talking for a long while, but I do know that you probably have some really lovely questions. So I thought I might stop there and see if we have maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes to share amongst ourselves, for you to ask questions, for me to answer. If you'd like to make comments, that's fine too. And then, of course, it would be lovely to end with 10 minutes of meditation. So does anyone have a question or a comment that they'd like to make?
I have a question, kind of, even though we probably know the answer or part of it. Like when you said we have a full battery and slowly we are losing the charge. And my question is like, even though we do meditations, we do Amrit Vela, we do Numasam, the battery sometimes you feel that it's still not fully charged or back to its full capacity from time to time. What other things can you do so you don't get into that predicament, or you, like you said, when somebody hits you, you have a level of purity and bounce back. So how do you, besides those things, what are the other ways in the Raj Yoga or something you can talk about or discuss?
Sure. I mean, you're very right. No matter how long you've been on a meditative journey, um, you know, you sometimes feel like you're moving forwards and you're doing well. And then there are those days when you feel like, oh God, you just go back, back into old patterns, back into old behavior. It takes time to charge the battery because it's taken time for the battery to become weak. So we need to be very patient with the self. Meditation is one tool. Reading or listening to new things every day is another tool. I think for me, in the last 10 months of lockdown, I learned a new tool, and it's probably one of the most precious tools I've ever been given as a gift. It's always been there, but I never used it as much. And I would call it reflection. A little bit like I spoke before, observing the self. Because I think the answers actually lie in everything that's going on the inside. You know, when we say my battery is not fully charged, how do we know that? Obviously, we know that things are not quite 100% because of our reactions and our behavior and our thinking and our emotions. You know, that is then what is a mirror to what is going on the inside. So if that's not quite right, you know, okay, so there's a little bit of space left for the battery to be filled. And there is that much, what would you call it, corruption or impurity or, you know, negativity still remaining within the soul. But I can't get rid of that unless I know what it is. You know, I really do need to watch. And when I observe myself and when I reflect, it needs to be done with a particular lens. You know, when you look at things, you have lenses, right? So that you can see correctly. And the lens that we need to be able to create change is the lens of honesty. If I don't observe myself honestly, if I don't look at myself with that deep understanding that there must be something I still don't know, there must be something that I still haven't realized. You know, the learning is not over. That's why the journey is not over. So unless I can honestly look within with a mind that is open to learning more, with eyes that want to see deeper, I'm always going to come up with the same answers, the same patterns, the same justifications. And so I was actually locked down away from Abu Dhabi. I had gone to India for a retreat in a place called Mount Abu, which is where the headquarters of the Brahma Kumaris and there are many campuses, but just the one headquarters. And I got locked down there. Just not a bad place to be locked down, to be honest with you. Beautiful, hilly sort of scenario, you know, very green, very beautiful, very pretty, a very meditative atmosphere. But I can't say that I am completely perfect or that any one person on that campus was perfect. So I was living with 240 other people. And the best thing that happened for me was that I could be there and be a guest. In fact, it became like a mantra in my mind. I'm a guest here. I'm only here for a little while longer. And that consciousness helped me to stay a little bit detached, to constantly hover in that helicopter so that I never really landed and got trapped in all the stuff that was going on. I would see things, I would observe things, I would watch people's behavior. It was a lot easier for me not to go on roller coaster rides because I was just a little bit detached. And so it was easy for me to actually reflect, to keep just a tiny little bit of distance between life and me. And it was also much, much easier for me to reflect and see when I started to get caught up in things. And just to catch myself and go, no, don't go there, don't go there. You don't actually live here. This is not your home. You're just a guest. You're just a guest. And the amazing thing that I learned that happened to me by the time I left was this feeling inside my heart that I'm not a guest there. I'm always a guest. And I've come back to Abu Dhabi with this feeling that I'm a guest here. I can't control things here. And who knows how long I will be here. And then this overwhelming feeling that I'm a guest anywhere. Wherever I am in this world, I will be a guest. And so I've managed to keep that space between me and life. And that is really what helped me yesterday. Don't react, don't respond. Just keep that space between you and others, between you and life. Because it's that space that keeps you safe. And, if I can keep myself safe, I can keep my battery charged at a particular level. I don't allow it to go down. So back to your question, how can I stay charged? Just keep reflecting. Just keep looking inside. Keep watching every disturbance, every bit of discomfort, and ask yourself, what is it telling me? Don't react from the old, because that's going to bring your battery down even more. Create a new response. Create stability. Create goodness. I hope that helps.
Yes, sure.
So I have a question too.
Sure.
The question I was going to ask is, what are the tools you need to cleanse out the suppressed emotions? The answer you gave now, would it be the same answer to my question also?
I think, one thing is to observe the emotions,
Right.
and one thing is dealing with it and actually doing the cleansing. I think, depending on the level of trauma that every soul has been through, it's different. There are some things that we've observed in our life, and through understanding the self, through observation, and through healing, through meditation, through feeling those feelings of peace, love, kindness, mercy. Some of those deep, emotions and traumas can get cleansed. I think some of them I've had to cleanse by talking to people. I have a few very good friends who are meditators as well. And luckily, some of them have counseling backgrounds. And they've been able to help me to question these emotions and these deeper feelings in a way that possibly I couldn't have questioned myself before. Some of the very deep emotions that we carry are feelings of guilt, feelings of shame, feelings of low self-respect. These are the kind of the core within me of all that is impure. From there stem all the other reactions and programs. And when I have to face that stuff, that's really the yucky stuff inside. Sometimes it helps if someone's holding your hand. And it might help, sometimes with these deeper things to actually talk to somebody, a friend who you can trust and who can help you with understanding some of that mess a little bit better. I think for 99% of us, that would be enough. My own reflection and observation and honest change, and having somebody or, different people who can help me through that change. In some cases, I have observed that if the trauma is so deep that it's created maybe some other psychological sort of dents inside, we do need to see a psychologist to help us to really understand why the wiring is so messed up. But those would be really extreme cases, maybe only 1% of people I know. But having said that, just a little bit of support from somebody who has that skill can help us so much. And you don't need to keep going, but just a little bit of guidance from a counselor or good psychologist. And it doesn't have to be sessions with a psychologist. It could be just a friend, a meditator friend who has that background. And it is very valuable. It can help to really cleanse a lot of the deep traumas inside the self.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Sister, I have a question, just an extension of the question that the lady just asked. What suppose you talk to the person directly who has been the cause of the trauma? And would that help in healing both the people involved?
Communication definitely helps, but a lot depends on the intention behind the communication. If the communication is to better understand the person, to ask them where they're coming from, then the communication is fantastic. If the communication has even the subtlest intention of blame, of pushing responsibility on them and saying, look, you own your stuff because 50% of the problem is you. I'm happy to own my 50%. Even if that is still there, it's not going to, I don't believe it will give you the right response, or the right outcome.
So that means everybody's perception to themselves is right.
Absolutely. And the person, if you ask them for their story, they will justify why they behave that way. Even if you and I can agree that anger is not a good thing and they got angry. But if we were to take that helicopter and go on a ride and see their entire life, you might find that somebody in their life, in their past, in their childhood, was angry. Maybe a parent, maybe a teacher, maybe a grandparent. And they saw that anger, that pattern so often, and they possibly even saw anger bringing change, bringing the result that the person wanted. If it was an angry person, who maybe a parent who managed to shut up the children with anger, then what did that child learn? Anger is a very useful tool because it brings immediate results.
Right.
So if we were to take that helicopter ride and look at their life with the eyes of compassion and understanding, you would probably identify why they are the way they are today. It may not be behavior that you will ever adopt. And obviously the fact that they're not happy, they're not comfortable, and they're behaving that way means it's something that's not based on love and peace. But understanding helps to then forgive, to not to blame, and to say, okay, I know where you're coming from. I don't want to be like that, but at least I can understand this is why you are the way you are. Sure. Then if you enter into the conversation saying, look, I've reflected on my own response, my own reaction, and I've realized that what matters to me more is that our relationship is maintained. More than anything else, the relationship is important.
Right.
Then I think, if you enter in that way and you say, look, I just want to understand why you said what you said or why you did what you did, it will help to heal. As long as I say, there's absolutely not the slightest intention of blame, shame, accusing, pushing responsibility on them. Because if they're not ready for all that, it'll just make the situation worse.
But
Sure,
sometimes
thank
some
you.
people don't want to communicate with them. Even if you want to sit and talk it out, as we say, they do not want to do that.
And
How do
that's
you
fine.
deal with such people?
Yeah, just let it go. Just keep being nice. Again, if it reaches a place where there is verbal abuse at home or there is physical abuse going on, there are always laws of each country to deal with that. Most of the countries that I know of or I've lived in would say if you're being physically or sexually abused, there is a process that you must follow according to the legal system of the country. If it is just verbal, ignore it. If you can't ignore it, get help. Move away. As I said before, you know, if you need to get counseling or support, do that. If they're not ready to change themselves, there's nothing you can do that will force them into change. Yes, if somebody is breaking the law, like I said before, through physical and sexual abuse, then there are ways of dealing with that. But I'm assuming that it's not that, and it's just conflict at home or at work. And if they're not prepared to change, you just need to work on yourself, protect yourself, so that your emotions stay within, you know, the boundaries of peace and love. And if you need to walk away, then you need to make that decision yourself. That for your own protection, to apply a bandage to your own hurt, sometimes, you know, we do need to walk away for a while and become stronger so that we can come back in the situation with a battery that is fuller, so we can deal with their stuff from a place of deeper wisdom and more capacity.
Sounds good.
It does sound good, but it takes a lot of it work. It does take a lot.
I know that very well.
So do I. It's a journey. It's a journey. We just
the dilemma comes. Yeah, that's where the dilemma comes. What should I do?
Yeah, might be worth talking to somebody who's in your immediate surroundings.
I've tried.
Who you trust. Yeah,
I've tried.
Try to talk to somebody who's a professional. You know, sometimes they come up with answers that are something we may not have looked at.
No, I haven't done that.
I know it sounds weird, and some of our cultures say, oh, we don't need counseling, we don't need a psychologist. But, you know, sometimes even for the sake of just getting a different perception, a different perspective, it helps.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I have a question more regarding a specific technique you can teach us in our day-to-day encounters with people on how to listen to them before we react to what they are saying.
Well, the technique is called press the pause button. It's my favorite technique, and sometimes I just don't manage to press it on time. The technique is just stop. Press the pause button. In Raj Yoga meditation, we say full stop. Sometimes full stop is not appropriate, but pause. Whenever you feel you're starting that emotional roller coaster, you're starting to react, you're starting to feel discomfort, just pause. You know, time and space create wisdom, because we all have wisdom deep down inside. The problem is we don't allow it to emerge. The voice of our conscience, the voice of our intellect, the voice of our inner wise self is always there. But we need time and space, or what we call silence in Raj Yoga. We need that mental, emotional, spiritual space inside us to listen to that voice. And, you know, to be able to do that, I just need to press that pause button inside. If it's a matter of listening to someone else, just pause. If it's a matter of not reacting, just pause. Give yourself time and space.
Because the come from is always, I know what's good for you, rather than listening to what they're going through.
Yeah. Of course, we all think we know what's best for them,
Right.
because that is the voice of an old friend, and the friend is called ego. And, you know, sometimes you have to tell that friend that it is a good friend, but you have another friend, and the friend is called wisdom. And wisdom is the opposite of ego. And to be able to allow that friend called wisdom to step in and be by your side, you just need to pause. You need inner space. Wisdom is the friend that says there's another way. There's another way of thinking. There's another way of seeing. There's another way of responding. And ego is the voice that says, do it my way, do it the old way. The trick is to have enough peace and enough patience inside to press the pause button at the right time.
Yeah.
And to stay there, and to just stay there and say, it's okay not to react. It's okay not to respond, especially if it's going to be words like, I've told you before. Don't you remember when I told you this in the past? You know, all of these things are just ego.
So, excuse me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
How to deal with a group in which everybody thinks they are superior than you, and then doesn't matter if you are quiet and you are not reacting and you are keep doing, and they are taking advantage of it, and then they start making you feel like you are made to do this, and they keep reminding you rutba and martaba.
So nobody can make you feel anyway. Who creates your feelings?
I do.
Yeah. So how can they make you feel unless you allow them to make you feel?
Because words are very powerful, right? So they don't make you forget. Like suppose if there are 35 people and then they are keep repeating the same things, like if you are hearing twice, 3 times in a week, the same thing, somebody is reminding you, you are younger in age. Because I work in a school, so those things happens with the kids, because I am the teacher who sits with the children and I listen to them. And then children keep telling me that because they are young, so parents keep reminding them, I am right, you are wrong. And then they have a perspective too. Or some of the co-workers who are saying that they are younger in the homes, or sister-in-laws or mother-in-laws or whoever in the bigger, on a little bit bigger in the relationship, they are trying to press them down. So we just discuss and then we don't come up and at the end, like everybody thinks the time will pass.
There will always be people who will use one of their labels to believe that they are superior to you. Whether it's the label of being a mother-in-law, whether it's the label of being a particular nationality, whether it's the label of being man or woman, whether it's the label of being a particular religion, culture, whatever. There'll always be people who will think that they are in a higher place than you. But what are we taught in meditation? That's just a label. It's a label created by a human being. In God's eyes, we are all souls, inner selves, beings, spirits, whatever word you want to use. And, you know, we are equal. You know what I love about coronavirus? You know what I love about coronavirus?
Yeah,
It hasn't spared anyone.
true.
You know, people in royal families, politicians, they're all getting it. The richest of the rich are getting it. Amitabh Bachchan got coronavirus. So it's the same thing. The truth is we are all the same. The problem is I don't believe it. When I don't believe I'm a soul and you're a soul, I believe that you are higher than me. It's my belief. It's nothing to do with them. When I got married, I really thought my mother-in-law had power over me. Now I realize that she has opinions, and so do I. We're both souls. And that smiling and laughing and keeping the atmosphere happy and peaceful helps us to come to a common decision. Having said that, I meet her once every 2 or 3 years, so it's not too hard. But the reality is she hasn't stopped being a mother-in-law, but I've stopped being the daughter-in-law. I've totally stopped being the daughter-in-law. I'm very respectful, I'm very loving, but I see her as a soul and I see myself as a soul. And I keep reminding myself, everyone in this world is equal to me.
Yes.
Even the Dalai Lama, who I have so much respect for, he's also a soul. He's also God's child. Mother Teresa, whoever it is, I do respect them. I learn from them. In God's eyes, I'm equal to them as a soul. They may have different wisdom. I have different wisdom. They may have a different part to play as an actor on this earth. I have my part to play. No one is better or worse. So can they make you feel low again? No.
No, because
No.
feelings are in my hand. Yes. Yes.
And when that feeling comes of, I'm low, just remind yourself, they can get coronavirus too. Right?
True.
So we're all the same.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm wondering whether we should move into meditation now, whether it's time to, unless there's any burning question, I would like you to take you through a few moments of meditation.
Yeah, dear Sister Sona, I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for giving us this time and to share with us, your words of wisdom and your words of experience, actually. We have come to that part of the time in the session that it's a good time for us to practice that pause button that you were talking about. The fact that, we are all learning how to become detached observers. And part of that, being the observer and being detached doesn't mean that we don't care. We are detached, we are heartless, feelingless. It's not, it just means giving ourselves the space so we can see the full picture. We can see the helicopter like we were mentioning. And that requires pause button. And you're going to walk us through this pause button today. And we're all going to be using different pause button times in order to give ourselves that space to see and to have a full perspective and a different perspective. But I want to thank you so much for having come and joined us, and hope that you will come back again.
Very happy to, Lisa. It's very cheap these days. I don't need a visa, so do invite me back to LA.
Visa and ticket and hours. So it's instantaneous. So we will definitely enjoy having you back, and I will reconnect with you through our communication. But meanwhile, do your magic.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you all who are on the call. So we'll go through some meditation for 5 minutes, and if I don't get the opportunity.
I forgot to mention in closing for everyone, if you're interested in this session, we have recorded this session and it is going to be posted on YouTube, the Los Angeles Brahma Kumaris channel. So if you look at the chat, I have enclosed the link to the YouTube. It's not going to be uploaded right away. Usually by Monday it's fully uploaded. So, but you have all the other classes in there too. And so take a look at it and copy the link if you don't have it, and refer to it when you need to. Om Shanti, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you all. So let's just prepare for a few moments of reflection. So just sit peacefully wherever you are and put down all your pens, notebooks, phones. And in this moment, I'd like you to just take a journey inwards. And imagine that you can step inside the inner self. Behind your eyes is a bubble. And that bubble is your inner space. And this inner space is so fortified that nothing except you can step in. So in this moment, just step inside your inner space. In this space, there is stillness. There is silence. No person from the outside, no situation can enter this space. I can just be here, at peace with myself and at peace with the world. And it feels so good to press that pause button and leave the world behind. And just come to my inner space. And now that I've paused my mind and I'm quiet and I feel safe and very still, if I look out at the world, I can watch people and I can observe situations. With the eyes of understanding and compassion. I can just observe how they are and ask myself, what made them like that? If I see a difficult situation, I can just watch and see how it became the way it is. What were the events that led to the situation being such a mess? just understanding, just stillness, just love and compassion. And now I take a deep breath in and out, and I walk out of my bubble, my inner space. And as I walk back into this world of action and reaction, I remember that whenever I need to, that safe place is always there. The minute I choose to press the pause button, I can step back into my safe bubble and take a break. Thank you. So I really want to wish you all a very wonderful December, Christmas, New Year, whatever it is that you're celebrating. And more than anything else, stay safe, stay comfortable at home, and look after your inner space too. Thank you. Om
Thank
Shanti.
you. Thank you, Om Shanti.
Om